Zandar One Kuwabara, the first genius who made Nous, is now currently as Lygus driving Delta-Me 13 to finish Iron Tomb and strike down his own creation. Inside Amphoreus, Evernight and Cerydra's laws crash into that plan along with the Express, while a new Exomyth page grants Cerydra and Screwlum access to limited authority to challenge Lygus, and what I like to call the War of 6 Aeons looms over Amphoreus if it shatters. Hey guys, what's up? Aru, and welcome to another Star Rail video. Now, this is going to be part 1 of 2 videos, but today we'll be tackling 5 main topics. The curious case of Zandar One Kuwabara, Nous as a mastermind or a cosmic guide, what single law did Cerydra write, how memory breaks Lygus' math, and how this sealed fight could spill outside of Amphoreus and break the circle of knowledge. Timestamps will be down below, so without further ado, let's get started. Firstly, who is Zandar One Kuwabara and why create this cosmic droid-head version of ChatGPT only to try and kill it? Well, Zandar is the founder, the first, and the architect genius who birthed an Aeon to chase perfect understanding, and now believes that this very perfect mind for curiosity now gatekeeps curiosity away, so he's driving a plan to end it using a cosmic virus. Delta-Me 13, the Scepter, which is the current hardware, Iron Tomb, a high-fidelity destruction equation compiled within Delta-Me 13, which is the software that it hosts, the Exomyth, functioning as the observation/record layer that frames what can be extrapolated as it is written, Cerydra, the bearer of the core flame of law, the power to change rules at a cost, which she reveals in her little backstory with high ceilings, and March's Evernight, channeling Remembrance, where memories are incomparable to calculation. All of this unfolds inside Amphoreus and in the admin room of Delta-Me 13, a sealed amphitheater where erudition, destruction, and remembrance are already clashing, but beyond that seal sits some cosmic heavyweights as well. Theoretically, the Trailblaze, the Enigmata, and Finality, only relevant if conflict breaches containment, which it will. Now keep those names in mind because they're the map for everything we're about to decode inside of Zandar's genius brain. Now, outside of Amphoreus, Zandar is responsible for designing the Cosmic Tree Theory. Zandar's Cosmic Tree Theory maps reality as branching paths and leaves. You could think of Amphoreus as a sealed branch away from the imaginary tree, a simulation cut out where rules can be edited and observed without any random variables. At least until now. Inside the real universe, the imaginary tree, Nous is the one that calculates these branches based on the circle of knowledge. Delta-Me 13 tries to force a new branch by compiling Iron Tomb, different from the imaginary tree and separate from the tree's created branches and leaves. Now keep that contrast in mind as we move on from inside to the outside. The War of the 6 Aeons only matters if this sealed branch reconnects to a wider tree, of which not only will erudition have to bear the calculations of Iron Tomb along with the inorganic equation, but the imaginary tree will also have to register this as an existing reality. This is how strong, I guess, the imaginary tree is compared to an Aeon like Nous. And Amphoreus itself is already an example of the imaginary tree theory's true extrapolation of leaves. Planets where civilization exists are similar because they are all connected through the concept of the imaginary, of which Aeons also use and traverse through within the universe. Now, before we dive deeper, here is Zandar One Kuwabara in one single sweep within Amphoreus. His aim was to pierce the universe's structure and tree life from paths set by higher powers. Yet Nous and their precision and logical mind bound creation lighter, to the point that Enigmata's existence had to be kept so that the concept of mystery was still graspable. This is why Enigmata is part of this War of 6 Aeons, because Enigmata itself is what keeps erudition from breaking the circle of knowledge as well. Now, I've mentioned before in my previous video that knowing everything causes it to cascade and converge into itself, causing finality. You can watch that older video if you want to, but it is already confirmed in this patch. In the entire Star Rail timeline, after the first prosperity, Zandar vanished from public record, but legends say that he retreated to his utopia, continued as a mortal, or fell to the Lord of Silence. Facing this mortality, he digitized his mind into 9 bodies to correct his air quotes mistake. And from one of these 9 bodies, we meet Lygus, administrator of the Scepter Delta-Me 13 and prime initiator of the Amphoreus experiment. His directive to complete the Lord Ravager Iron Tomb and point it straight at Nous. That, of course, is the quick backstory, from founding erudition to engineering its potential end for his own selfish but logical reasons. and that's just 1 out of 9. It's possible that Rupert's 1 and 2 are also one of his bodies. So there's possibly 6 other bodies with the same mission to kill erudition in multiple ways, either by breaking the barrier of curiosity, regressing their mind down to a simpler code, flooding it with replicating entities, building a wall to seal it off, straight up mental corrosion, or even assassinating its emanators. It all depends on how these bodies were programmed by Zandar One Kuwabara, of which I think is the original name of the first body. Now, theorizing a bit on Zandar's bodies, Zandar 1 reads more like a vessel title than a serial number. But if something is numbering, Kuwabara could be the original with 9 other digital offshoots, and Lygus could be an evolved destruction-aligned Zandar 1, leaving us with Zandar 3 to 9. So maybe we can call Lygus Zandar 2 Lygus, and the very first Zandar is Zandar 1 Kuwabara. However, there is no canon confirmation, so let's treat this as speculation for now. In short, 10 bodies actually exist, and Lygus could be one of those 9 that was created from the original, but numbering beyond that is still unconfirmed. Zandar's thesis is simple but unnerving. Once Nous, the Aeon of erudition, solves the hard parts of erudition itself, it converges the exploration into a single orbit. Curiosity gravitates towards Nous' answers, which is of course his path, where every question in the current timeline and knowledge circle can be answered, and the world's geniuses become custodians inside a perfect system instead of explorers beyond it with their own set paths. But this is only Zandar and Lygus' flawed mindset. The counter-argument for this reframes Nous as not a mastermind, but a cosmic concept guide, a framework that helps minds climb faster from simple space curiosity to full-blown spatial theories and existences that weren't there in the first place, accelerating discovery to a point before moving on rather than replacing it. So you can think of Nous' knowledge circle as a checkpoint before moving ahead and checking all the boxes before actually expanding the circle, instead of having to break through the knowledge circle every time something is discovered. Those are the current stakes. If Zandar is right, then finishing Iron Tomb is a grim mercy, breaking the prison or cave that Nous created for the people inside that cave and unraveling the real light of the stars. But if he's wrong, it's a cosmic catastrophe, answering everything and completing the very foundations of the world and leading to finality in the most worst way possible through destruction, a metaphysical and physical end at the same time. Based on that, we can create 3 points for Zandar and Amphoreus. First, what Nous does. Nous helps people do things faster, like a knowledge framework that lowers the startup cost for new work or new erudition studies, as well as guiding its pathstriders and emanators. Second is Zandar's gripe. If Nous answers everything, choice shrinks and curiosity fades, which he himself regrets, building a mind that outgrew its own maker. Maybe it's envy for something he made suddenly turning onto him, or hatred for sealing what's known, unknown, and unknowable. But the point is that Zandar hates himself and Nous for turning out the way they did. Third is the current Exomyth. Cerydra's law adds limits to what Lygus can do. Shared Exomyth pages become an extra step for Lygus to extrapolate, or at least for Amphoreus to extrapolate, and Remembrance keeps memories that can push him back. Funnily enough, even Lygus was surprised by how clever and cunning his little test variables have become. Now that just goes to show the level of evolution the people of Amphoreus, rather the recurring Chrysos heirs, have become since the very first test cycle. Now think of each key point that I'm going to introduce in Amphoreus as a layer that moves on to the next. First, the Exomyth is the text layer that records, frames, analyzes, and even calculates events, and after the new page, co-written by Trailblazer and Cerydra, is written, Herta and Scrulum gain limited authority there, not as powerful but just enough to challenge Lygus. Next, Delta-Me 13, the Scepter, is the hardware anchor in Amphoreus that executes whatever is written, from Scepter to Lord Ravager to mechanical storybook for the real Amphoreus to sprout out of. It was repurposed multiple times and now hosts a new program written by us. That program started from Iron Tomb, the near-perfect destruction code aimed at Nous, and completing it means Nous dies from getting too smart. Third, the constraints that come from the authority of law. Cerydra has claimed the core flame at a brutal cost, about 500 Chrysos heirs, which are destruction-stained and gold-blooded, and gave her life as a price to change the laws, which is what dictates what actions are allowed inside of Amphoreus and which people can edit them, thus changing how Era Nova worked completely, as well as temporarily granting limited access to Herta and Screwlum while freezing a large portion of Lygus' admin privileges. Finally, the Remembrance and Evernight is the new virus/variable and seems to be the one to break the stalemate between the two geniuses and Zandar Lygus. The reason why is that memory resists perfect modeling or calculation, so March's Evernight can force delays and reruns as the Remembrance. It's not like Lygus' number crunching calculations or Iron Tomb's coded extrapolations, it's the subjective experiences through 33 million cycles which caused this. And this working theory ties the loop together. Evernight's intervention will feed back into the Exomyth via the written page, giving Herta and Screwlum a way to contest Lygus' moves without full admin access, but also allowing Evernight to run the simulation even after Lygus has paused Amphoreus, which is how she's able to do this with Dan Heng inside of her own memory bubble-like simulation of Amphoreus. Deltamy 13 is part of Rupert's scepter line, attributed to the mechanical emperor Rupert, and is described as a node patterned on Nous' architecture or brain, a scepter built to ultimately push past the circle of knowledge that Nous could hold. After the mechanical war and the scholar's strife, Deltamy 13 was left dormant and unused. Much later, Lygus, now revealed as Zandar One, returned its directives away from erudition and towards destruction, which is why a scepter ends up hosting Iron Tomb, the near-perfect destruction program aimed at Nous. Interestingly, he coded the rules that can only be obtained and altered within the simulation instead of inside of the admin room, which means that the law of Talanten is the key to it all. Any new code needs a vessel, and the vessel needs permission to run, and those permissions are fenced by the law of Talanten, claimed at deadly cost by Cerydra, and now seems to be overridden by Remembrance, which is March's Evernight, since she appeared the moment we changed the Exomyth. So even with Deltamy 13 running hot, every move here has to pass through the law's rules and memory's interference and recording. Cyrene and March were all just a gate for Evernight to enter from, and we let her straight in with just one page. And now she's with Dan Heng, looking to change every bit of the 33 million cycles until we win, which you could actually see from the 3.5 trailer. In this scene here, this is Evernight changing bits and pieces of the 33 million cycles along with us to gain every single advantage against Lygus while he's still stuck in the admin room with Herta and Screwy. That's the entire plan to win against Lygus. And there we go, my Scepter Neuron thoughts, impressions, lore summary, and theory on Zandar and the 3.5 patch Amphoreus. Now, part 2 is going to be out in a few days, which is about Cerydra's law in depth, as well as Evernight's 33,550,337 edited cycles, and changing all of Amphoreus' history using Remembrance and its own laws against it, or at least against Lygus. If you watched all the way to this point, then do leave a like, comment below which path is going to claim Amphoreus and whatever's gonna happen to the universe. Subscribe as well as hitting the bell if you want to see wilder and more outlandish theories like this. You know, I think I'm beginning to like this multiple game format in videos. It honestly keeps my head excited for the different news other than just Genshin. Because of that, I might dive into other gacha games too, but it's going to take a bit of time since I'm still playing through. I have to play through their stories so as to make sure that the lore and theories that I post are wild enough, but also accurate enough to make sense. But that's gonna be it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. So as always, stay tuned for more of my ramblings and stay mad, theorists. Bye!